Hello, I'm Stanley Iezman. I'm the Chairman and CEO of American Realty Advisors. And today we're fortunate to have Sabrina Unger, our Managing Director of Research and Strategy, with us to talk about the impact of demographics on our investment strategies. Sabrina, one of the most important things that you and I talk about when we're thinking about investing is demographics and how they impact the demand of real estate. How do you think about demographics today from an investment standpoint?
The single greatest demographic influence sort of in the next decade as it relates to our investment strategy is the aging of the domestic population. We've known for years that every generation that comes after millennials is smaller than the last one. And so we think about what that suggests about the composition overall of the domestic population. So years ago, we were effectively a pyramid. There were a lot more younger people at the bottom, supporting relatively fewer elderly people at the top. We have now essentially shifted shape as a population where we've gone from pyramid to pillar, right? So now we have many more elderly people being supported by fewer relative young people. And so when we think about those structures, pyramids are built to last, but pillars can often topple.
So that is a very interesting problem that we have because we have a demographic shift of the boomers, my generation, sort of aging out, and the utilization of real estate is very different than it was before. How do you think this older population shifts the demand for real estate today?
I think what's important to remember is that older households tend to spend less in aggregate, right? So it suggests consumer spending, retail sales, all of that inevitably slows as this pyramid to pillar shift perpetuates, right? As we move forward, there's less spending. And so what that suggests for retailer profits could be challenging. What it suggests for future net demand for industrial, obviously that would moderate in response to slower retail sales. So that would be a net negative. Now, the one caveat to lower spending by older households is healthcare. So somebody age 65 plus spends nearly 4 times as much on healthcare than what they spent on healthcare when they were in their 20s and 30s. And so what that suggests, of course, is there will be continued demand for things like life science that, sort of caters to aging and all the processes to help facilitate that, as well as outpatient medical offices.
Do you think we're going to have enough workers to be able to provide the medical care and the home health care aids that are going to be necessary for this aging population?
I think we will certainly see more and more companies try to solve that problem through technology. Maybe we get to a place in the future where human workers are also being supplemented with some sort of robotic companion to help with that labor. We've talked about this in other times, but the reality is that the labor force is sort of perpetually tight in this country because, again, every subsequent generation is smaller than the last. And so as we have more baby boomers retire, we have fewer people that are sort of ready to step into those roles. So we're going to have to lean on technology to solve for some of that gap.
And what other areas do you see an aging population impact the utilization of real estate? Do you see in multifamily housing or single family housing? I mean, how do you interpret that?
I think one of the questions that we get sort of related to this is, should we be doing some more in sort of purpose senior housing, right? Should we be doing assisted living? Doesn't this signify there's going to be a lot of demand for that? The average age of a person that moves into assisted living for the first time is 83. So even the front end of the baby boomer wave, they're not going to hit that age until 2029. So we have a long runway to sort of position ourselves if we want to take advantage of that in our strategies. What I think it does impact is, to the point that you're getting at, is housing, right? So if, they can't live alone and maybe they don't have the income to be able to afford independent living, they're going to look to their children to house them. Right. And so I don't think that's going to happen in a 1-bedroom apartment. So it actually sort of bolsters the intermediate and longer term case for purpose-built single-family rentals, right? Because they tend to have more space. We may see some changes in terms of design of housing where we see very specific living zones. So if you are an older, child and you have your parent move in, they sort of have their dedicated space in your home, you have your own dedicated space. So we can certainly see that evolution come to play. And, we've talked about things like accessory dwelling units. So the granny pod in the yard, I think municipalities will really have to consider their willingness to allow those things on single family plots so that, again, the children can help take care of the elderly parents that may not be able to or want to go into a traditional facility.
Implicit in your conversation is the fact that we have this massive demographic shift with fewer people. And every day we look in the paper that the job openings that are unfilled are significantly higher today than they were 10 years ago. How do we think about that in terms of being able to fill that gap absent a change in immigration, which is a political solution to a demographic problem?
Yeah, I think you sort of took my answer to your question, which is the whole reason that advanced economies, not just the United States, have been able to sort of backfill the gap left behind by an aging population is through immigration. Right. So the United States is not alone in the fact that we're going from pyramid to pillar. The countries that have been able to address this have more lax immigration policies. And that has propped up the United States historically. Our birth rates have continued to be on the decline. Again, that's very typical of an advanced economy where education levels go up. So I don't think that we can sort of prompt a reversal in domestic population's willingness to have more children, right? There's a whole host of reasons why people aren't doing that. And so absent a reversal in immigration policy, I think that gap persists.
So you and I always talk about economics driving decision making because that really underscores everything. It would seem that our immigration policy surrounding this question, we should be allowing more people in because that would drive the economy and we would have greater growth than we're otherwise having right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We look at sort of the way immigration fills labor. It's productive labor. They often have more children, at least first generation. So again, that helps with consumption and consumer spending. There's very little economic downside to a more lax immigration policy. As you alluded to, it's almost wholly political.
So let's talk about our favorite topic, Gen Z and the Millennials, and what they do and what they don't do and what their needs are in terms of real estate. How do you think this new generation is going to utilize real estate and what are the changes that we should expect?
We cannot overemphasize the importance of affordability for those cohorts. So, we think about millennial and Gen Z, what are the sort of characteristics of them? They are consistently burdened with student loan debt. They, are sort of unable to get into the for sale housing market, which has traditionally been sort of a wealth generation mechanism. And on top of it, their prospects in terms of earnings and jobs have been marred not by one, but two really disruptive economic periods in their early earning years, both with the global financial crisis and then with COVID. So, interestingly, inflation adjusted earnings for millennials at sort of the age of 40 is higher than sort of previous generations at the age of 40. So when you look at it through that lens, it doesn't seem like it should be that bad. They should be able to buy a home. But again, housing prices have accelerated so much more rapidly than their income that they just can't get into the market. And so it's creating a generational wealth gap, right? So whereas previous generations bought a house, the home appreciated, they could pull equity out, they could contribute to the economy. These younger generations are just simply not able en masse to crack into that. And so what it suggests about real estate demand going forward is that there's going to be a perpetual, chronic, growing need for affordably, accessibly priced rental product, at least until there's a greater generational shift from sort of older generations holding the for sale market and passing it on to these younger generations.
Well, this is a great topic, and I want to thank you for your time, Sabrina, on this exciting conversation about demographics. And we're going to be looking at this over the next several months again as we see the changes that are occurring.
Absolutely.